The sun hung low over Dry Creek, spilling a burnt orange glow across the horizon as if the whole sky had caught fire. Cattle grazed lazily in the pastures, their silhouettes outlined against the fading light. Inside the kitchen of the Double M Ranch, the soft clatter of pots and the smell of fresh bread filled the air. Clara Hensley moved quietly from counter to stove, her every motion careful, measured, as though even the air might bruise her if she moved too suddenly. To anyone passing through, she looked like a picture of calm, a simple settler woman doing honest work. But Ethan McGraw saw more than most. He always had. Ethan was a man who carried silence the way others carried guns. Big, broad, with shoulders that looked like they could bear the world, he was known across Montana for his size, his strength, and his word. They called him the giant rancher, but those who worked for him knew the truth, his heart was gentler than his hands. He treated every ranch hand with respect, every animal with care, and every problem with quiet thought before action. Yet lately, his mind had been restless, circling back to one thing, Clara. She'd arrived 3 months earlier, pale and thin, with a letter of recommendation from a retired preacher in Silver Bend. Ethan hadn't asked questions, good help was hard to find, and she'd proven herself within a week. Her biscuits were so soft they melted in your mouth, her coffee strong enough to wake the dead. She never complained, never asked for more than what she was given. But she also never smiled for long. Her eyes carried the look of someone who had lived through something too heavy for words. That night, the ranch hands were out late repairing a broken fence line, and the house was quiet except for the slow bubbling of stew on the stove. Ethan came in from the barn, dusting off his hat, the boards creaking under his weight. He saw her there, sleeves rolled up to her elbows, hair coming loose from its braid. She was scrubbing dishes with fierce concentration, as if she could scrub away the memories behind her eyes. For a moment, he just watched her. Then the light shifted, her sleeve slipped, and he saw it, deep, uneven bruises, fading from purple to sickly yellow, reaching around her wrist like the imprint of someone's grip. His chest tightened. He'd seen wounds like that before, on men who'd been beaten, on horses whipped too hard. But not on a woman who flinched at shadows. Clara noticed his stare, froze, then yanked the sleeve down as if burned. "It's nothin', Mr. McGraw," she said quickly, her voice breaking. "I just tripped over the woodpile." Ethan's brow furrowed. "Woodpiles don't grab hold of you, Miss Hensley." Her hands shook as she rinsed the plate. "Please," she whispered, "don't ask." He took a slow breath, trying to calm the storm rising in his chest. He'd never been one to pry, but he'd also never been one to stand by while someone suffered. "You don't have to be afraid here," he said softly. She turned then, meeting his eyes for the first time that night. They were wet and trembling, a mixture of fear and disbelief. "You don't understand," she murmured. "Safety's just a word, it don't last." Then she turned back to her dishes, shoulders hunched like a wounded bird protecting its wings. He didn't press her, not that night, but when he stepped outside into the cool air, the stars overhead looked sharper than usual, and something inside him hardened. He'd seen cruelty before, seen men who thought they owned the world, and the women in it. He couldn't prove it yet, but his gut told him she wasn't running from an accident. She was running from a man. For the next few days, Ethan watched quietly. Clara worked as if nothing had happened, humming while she cooked, keeping to her chores, but there was a new restlessness in her movements. She jumped at loud noises. When a stranger rode past the ranch road, she froze, eyes darting to the window. One afternoon, when a horse neighed too suddenly, she dropped a pan and covered her head like she expected a blow. That was when Ethan knew, someone had broken her spirit long before she ever came here. That evening, the air was heavy with the scent of rain. The ranch hands had turned in early, and the first drops began to fall against the tin roof. Clara sat outside the kitchen door, arms wrapped around herself, staring into the distance. Ethan found her there, a lantern in his hand. The light made her look smaller somehow, fragile but still standing. "You'll catch cold sittin' out here," he said, his voice low. She didn't look at him. "Sometimes the quiet helps me forget." He sat down beside her on the steps, his boots creaking against the wood. "Forget what?" For a long moment, she didn't answer. Then her voice came out soft, trembling. "My husband." The word hung in the air like thunder before the strike. "He was supposed to be dead," she whispered. "They said his horse fell crossing the river near Silver Bend. I thought I was free." Her hands twisted in her lap. "But I saw him, Ethan. I saw him in town last week. He looked right at me. I didn't think he recognized me, but I know that look. He'll come. Ethan's grip on the lantern tightened until his knuckles turned white. He's the one who did that to you. Her silence was answer enough. He nodded slowly, his jaw clenched. If he sets foot on this ranch, he won't walk off it. She looked up, startled. You can't. He's dangerous. So am I, he said simply. They sat in silence for a long time, the rain tapping against the porch, the lantern flame flickering between them. For the first time in years, Clara didn't feel alone. The next few nights passed without incident. Ethan doubled the patrols, kept his rifle loaded, and made sure every ranch hand knew to keep an eye out for strangers. But his gut told him the peace wouldn't last. He was right. It happened on a moonless night. The dogs started barking, sharp and furious. Ethan was out of bed before his boots hit the floor. He grabbed his rifle and stepped outside, the cold air biting his face. He saw movement by the barn, a shadow staggering in the dark, the glint of metal in hand. Then Clara's voice cut through the night, desperate and terrified. Ethan, he's here. Out of the darkness came a man's laugh, harsh, bitter, soaked in whiskey and hate. Clara, you thought you could run from me. Ethan stepped forward, rain beginning to fall in cold sheets. The lightning flashed, revealing the man's face, scarred, mean, eyes burning with madness. He raised his hand, and Ethan saw the glint of a pistol. Put that down, Ethan said, voice low and steady, like the rumble before a storm. You're on my land now. She's my wife. The man shouted. She belongs to me. Ethan didn't move an inch. Not anymore. The man lunged forward. Ethan swung first, his fist connecting with a sound that cracked through the rain. The pistol flew from the man's hand. He went down hard, face in the mud. Ethan stood over him, chest heaving, rain streaming down his face like tears he'd never admit to shedding. When the sheriff arrived an hour later, Ethan handed him the pistol and a letter Clara had written earlier that day, her confession to every bruise, every night of terror. The sheriff read it quietly, then nodded. You did right, McGraw. By morning, the town was alive with whispers. They said the giant rancher had stood up against a devil. Some said he was a hero. Others said he should have stayed out of it. But in the small kitchen of the Double M Ranch, Clara sat by the window, the storm outside finally gone, her hands wrapped around a mug of coffee. For the first time in years, she wasn't shaking. And when Ethan passed by the doorway, she looked up and met his eyes, steady, unafraid. He nodded once, and she smiled. A real smile, one that reached her eyes and stayed. The weeks after that storm felt different, as though the land itself had taken a deep breath and finally exhaled. The air over the Double M Ranch seemed lighter, the mornings clearer. But inside both Ethan and Clara, the weight of what had happened still lingered. It wasn't something that just disappeared like fog, it stayed, quiet and heavy, sitting between them in every shared glance, every silence too long to name. Clara had begun to walk with her head higher, but sometimes when the wind howled through the rafters, she still flinched. The bruises faded, but the memories didn't. They came in flashes, the sound of boots behind her, the sting of words she tried so hard to forget. Ethan noticed. He always noticed, but he never asked, never pushed. He simply made sure she had what she needed, a safe place, quiet company, and time. The town of Dry Creek, though, wasn't so kind. News traveled faster than wildfire in a dry season, and soon everyone had their version of the story. Some called her a poor, brave soul who'd escaped a monster. Others said she'd led him on, that Ethan had no business getting involved. People whispered in the churchyard, in the general store, and at the saloon. The noise of it all reached Clara eventually, it always did. One morning, she came into the kitchen pale and quiet. Ethan was fixing the window latch, his hat tipped back. She placed a folded piece of paper on the table beside him. I can't stay here forever, Ethan, she said softly. You've done more for me than I ever deserved. But the longer I stay, the more they'll talk. About you, about me. I don't want that. He didn't look up right away. He tightened the latch, tested it, then turned slowly. Clara, he said, voice low and steady, you think I give a damn what they talk about? Her lips trembled with a tired smile. I know you don't, but I do. I can't be the reason people spit your name when you walk through town. He pushed the note back toward her. Let 'em talk. This place is big enough for both of us. But she shook her head. No place is big enough to hide from gossip, Ethan. It'll follow until I make something of my own. He wanted to argue, but deep down he understood. A cage was still a cage, even if it was made of kindness. She needed more than safety now, she needed to belong again. In the days that followed, Clara worked harder than ever, baking, cleaning, mending clothes. Ethan could tell she was preparing herself to leave, though neither of them said it aloud. Sometimes, when he came in from the fields, he'd find her humming quietly while kneading dough, a faraway look in her eyes. He wondered what she saw in her mind, freedom or fear. Then one afternoon, she approached him by the corral. The horses snorted softly behind them, the air thick with dust and sun. She wore a plain blue dress and had her sleeves rolled up, no longer hiding what had once been shame. Her skin was clear now, her eyes brighter. "Teach me," she said simply. He turned, squinting. "Teach you what?" "How to live without being afraid." He studied her for a long moment, the sun reflecting off the silver buckle at his belt. Then he nodded once. "All right," and so it began. Ethan started small. He taught her how to saddle a horse, how to sit steady even when the ground beneath her shifted. At first, she trembled every time the animal moved, gripping the reins too tightly, holding her breath. But Ethan's voice, calm, steady, patient, guided her through. Breathe with the horse, not against it, he'd say. You fight it, you fall. The first time she rode out across the open pasture, the wind caught her hair and sent it flying like ribbons of gold. She laughed, a sound Ethan hadn't heard before, bright and free. The ranch hands paused their work to watch. They didn't say a word, but their smiles told enough. That summer, Clara learned to fix fences, shear sheep, even brand cattle. She burned her fingers more than once, but every scar became a mark of strength rather than pain. Ethan watched from a distance, proud but quiet, as she began to find pieces of herself again. Sometimes he caught her standing at the edge of the property, looking toward town with that old hesitation, as though she was still deciding if she belonged anywhere at all. But not everyone was proud. Some of the townsfolk grew bitter at the sight of her freedom. They didn't like what they couldn't understand, a woman who refused to crawl back into the shadows, and a man who didn't care what people thought. One evening, Ethan stopped by the general store for supplies. Two men were standing by the counter, voices low but sharp. She's a married woman, one sneered. Living out there with him, doing Lord knows what. It ain't right. Ethan's back stiffened. He set down the sack of grain, turned slowly, and faced them. His voice came out low and even. You talk about her again, and I'll make sure you regret it. The taller man smirked. Just sayin' what everyone else is thinkin', McGraw. Ethan's hand slammed down on the counter hard enough to rattle the jars. Then they better learn to think different. His eyes burned through both men until they looked away. The store went silent. Later that night, when Clara found out, she came to him on the porch. The moon hung high, the air cool and still. You can't fight the whole town for me, she said quietly. Ethan leaned against the post, the glow of his cigarette soft against the dark. Then let him come, he said. You've fought enough battles. This one's mine. She stepped closer, the lantern light catching her face. I don't need a man to save me anymore, Ethan. He looked down at her, eyes softening. I know you don't, but I still will if it means they leave you in peace. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The night was full of small sounds, the crickets, the wind brushing the porch steps, the quiet hum of life moving forward. Then Clara reached for his hand, her fingers brushing the calloused strength of his. She placed his palm over her heart. You gave me back my courage, she whispered. Maybe that's enough. By early autumn, the leaves began to change, painting the valley in gold and rust. Clara had made her decision. She was going to stay in Dry Creek but move into town, start a small bakery with the money she'd saved. She wanted to feed people, to create warmth again, not just for herself but for everyone who'd ever felt like her, alone, unseen. Ethan helped her build it, every plank, every window, every nail. When the little shop opened, folks came out of curiosity first, then stayed for the smell of fresh bread and the soft, steady kindness that always came with it. Even the ones who'd whispered before started to smile when they saw her. The sheriff, leaning against the doorframe one morning, said with a grin, Guess you proved this town wrong, Miss Hensley. She smiled back. I didn't prove anything, I just stopped hiding. And she had. Every day, she stood behind that counter, sleeves rolled up, laughter filling the air. Ethan came by most mornings, hat in hand, sitting by the window with a cup of coffee she always poured herself. They didn't need to say much. The silence between them wasn't heavy anymore, it was peace. Sometimes, as he left, He'd look back through the window. She'd be there, serving a customer, her face glowing with life. And though the world had tried to break her, she'd built something stronger in its place. Ethan's voice would linger like the wind after he rode off, soft, deep, steady. I thought I'd seen every kind of pain a person could hide. But it ain't the bruises that matter, it's the courage to let someone see them and still keep living. And out on the quiet streets of Dry Creek, that courage began to heal more than one heart.